You know when you're sitting around the campfire with the other insufferable beard-stroking boomer whingers, all parked up on the gold-encrusted shores of Dingo Piss Creek. You talk about this and that, but inevitably there will be a lull in the conversation, because doubtless you've already thrashed out the big issues, haven't you? GVM upgrades and how impossibly wonderful they are, the merits of composting crappers compared with, imported Italian porcelain at the Hyatt. Inevitably, a beard-stroking twat quite close to you will pipe up and say something about the staggering cost of new vehicles, how new vehicles have become impossibly expensive, which I do find somewhat ironic, given that all you can see up and down the shore are six-figure caravans being towed by six-figure 4x4s, all featuring 5 figures of useless modifications. But anyway, so expensive, dude. So impossibly expensive. Except that's bullshit, and I'm going to prove it to you next. To bring you this ridiculously confronting video of facts, I had to go back in time and investigate 5 different categories of vehicle. I went back to 2000, and then I jumped forward 10 years to 2010 and then 2016, because that's 10 years ago now, and of course 2021, because that's 5 years back. And I looked at the price of LandCruisers, Patrols, HiLuxes, RAV4s, the Mazda 3, and just for shits and giggles, the BMW M3, my kryptonite of performance car. I looked at the prices then versus the prices now, the list price in Australia, not including on-road costs. And all of the data you will see in this story is from redbook.com.au, meaning you can verify it anytime. I chose popular vehicles that have been around as a salient feature of our automotive culture for 26 years. More or less. It would be so easy to look at the top spec LandCruiser back in 2000 at just $82,990 and a current 300 series Sahara for $140,310, if you don't mind, and declare my argument null and void. The prices are clearly out of control, dude. It's as if car makers are expecting you to bend, grab both cheeks, and hum Strangers in the Night. Except money doesn't actually work that way, does it? You can't compare dollars in 2000 to dollars in 2026, at least not directly. We have this thing, it's called inflation. It diminishes buying power. We've had wage growth, imagine that. Pay packets have gotten bigger in 26 years. If you want to compare historic prices like a proper grown-up, you really do have to sit down and factor that stuff in, at least if you want to arrive at defensible conclusions. When you actually crunch these numbers using the CPI and average weekly earnings and things of that nature, it becomes clearly apparent that spending $1 back at the turn of the century is roughly the same as spending $2 today. In other words, the buying power of $1 of Australian currency has approximately halved in the past 26 years. It might not suit you to admit this, of course, because it might get in the way of your convenient narrative, but new cars have become substantially cheaper when you adjust for the Consumer Price Index and average weekly earnings. This is a fact, and the really cool thing about facts is that you don't have to like them. They're still facts. And I'm going to lay this out for you with actual price data and examples next. This is the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra in Desert Sand from Manscaped. If your life is a special operation, then this is how you impose order and restore freedom in the wildest to rain. I'm told limited quantities are available in desert sand, so act now. I've got a black one and a white one, been using them for months. Both awesome. The two skin-safe blade heads essentially mean you get two trimmers in one. A trimmer blade to tackle the overgrowth and a foil blade for the final polish, if that's how you roll. Both of these blade heads work remarkably well, but the thing that is just so super impressive from a design point of view, at least for me, is the swap over. Changing in between them is an example of really slick industrial design. Like, the click into position is so positive, it's locked in, there's no doubt. There you go. It's not going anywhere, but then when you want to change it, super easy to do. And there's never any ambiguity about where you are in the procedure. The LED headlamp is switchable between two colour temperatures, and if you press and hold the headlamp button with the unit off, you activate the travel lock, and thus you will not groom the inside of your bag in the overhead locker all the way across the country. There's a big capacity rechargeable lithium-ion battery, a high RPM motor, USB-C recharging, a 3-level battery indicator, and my personal favourite feature, it's waterproof, so you can use it in the shower, and clean up is dead easy. Manscaped offers a 2-year warranty on all powered devices. So head over to manscaped.com/autoexpert now and grab your Desert Sand Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. Use my promo code AutoExpert and you'll get 15% off your entire order. That's 15% off with promo code AutoExpert at manscaped.com/AutoExpert. The two ways to look at this, of course, are what is the old price equivalent to in today's coin, or how many weeks of average full-time weekly earnings would it take to procure that car then versus the roughly equivalent car now. They're both totally valid ways to look at historic prices, and they kind of line up, although inflation and wages growth do not occur historically in lockstep. CPI, the Consumer Price Index, is for adjusting dollars back then to dollars today. An average weekly earnings paints a picture of affordability. It tells you how many weeks the average working stiff needs to save up to procure anything. ABS data says that if you go from dollars in 2000 to equivalent dollars today, you basically double it. For equivalent wages, it's roughly 2.5 times. For 2010, it's about 1.5 times on the CPI and 1.6 for wages. 2016 is roughly 1.3 for both, and 2021 is about 1.2 for both. I adjusted all of these historic prices using a basic Google spreadsheet because, you know, being a YouTuber is at times impossibly glamorous. A LandCruiser GXV back in 2000 was the recent ancestor of today's Sahara, and $82,990 does seem dirt cheap until you factor in inflation and wages growth. 83 grand in 2000 is actually the equivalent of spending $170,000 today when you adjust for inflation. Imagine spending that on a new LandCruiser. A 2026 LandCruiser Sahara is significantly more affordable than that. It took more than 100 weeks of average earnings to buy one back in 2000, but just 68 weeks today. This is not a one-off data cherry pick either. This is a trend of increasing value. It's even more remarkable than you think, because when you fast forward 26 years in automotive technology, you get better performance, more comfort, more refinement, and a ton more features. And now, let us look at the other big bogan boomer, bush-bashing bus. bro. A top-spec TI Patrol was $65,990 back in 2000, which also sounds insanely cheap until you factor in that this is equivalent to spending roughly $136,000 today. But today's price is just 95 grand, which is still a hefty chunk of cash, I get that, but it's a lot less than 136. And 82 weeks of average pay back then has shrunk to 47 weeks today. You can see this trend pretty clearly every year. The fact is, patrols have been getting more affordable in all real terms every year, while virtually everyone I know has been bogan boomer bitchin' about the staggering price. The Toyota HiLux SR5 has been such a foundation of the Dingo Piss Creek visitation set for decades. Such a lot of putrefied urine under the bridge at this point. 54 weeks of average pay back in 2000, 43,500 Schittsvillian micro pesos equals about 90 grand in today's coin. Yet an SR5 today is just roughly 66 grand, which is about 32 weeks of average weekly earnings. Incredibly more affordable, I would argue. 22 weeks more affordable than back in 2000. And like all these others, you can see it's clearly a trend of increasing affordability, despite most people claiming the exact opposite. The RAV4 was just 6 years old back in 2000. RAV4 Cruisers sold for $36,000 back then, which is like spending 74 grand today. And they were tiny too. A 2000 RAV4 Cruiser was 4.2 meters long and weighed just 1,285 kilos, which is shorter and lighter than a current Corolla ZR hatch. So 45 weeks of average pay back then, down to 29 weeks today, and today's one is a hybrid with all of the inherent cost and complexity of that powertrain, together with all of the other contemporary tech and features. It's the same story for the Mazda 3 and its predecessor, the 323. Top spec Astina 323 was 26 grand back in 2000, about the same as paying 54 grand today. And 33 weeks of average earnings back then is down to 21 weeks today. And the obvious conclusion there is that small cars have become much more affordable too, in real tangible ways. And finally, my kryptonite, the BMW M3, which is pretty much the argument-stopping definitive driver's car of all time. If you said I could have all 5 ex-wives in a hot tub in Tuscany except number 3 because her ice-cold heart would shatter, or one afternoon at the Nürburgring in someone else's M3 competition X-Drive. Enjoy the antipasto, ladies. I couldn't actually find an M3 listed on Redbook for 2000, but applying the right correction factors for CPI and earnings for a 2001 M3 turns the $141,500 spend in 2001 dollars into an eye-watering $280,000 spend in equivalent 2026 dollars. A 2026 M3, even the top spec X-Drive one, is almost $100,000 more affordable. And the 164 weeks of average weekly earnings in 2000 has shrunk to just 91 weeks in 2026. Plus, you get DCT and xDrive. Like, the 2001 model is a rear drive manual, and I don't have a problem with that, but technology does march on. If you're a rear drive purist, or you've just not yet experienced the abject terror of pumping 350 kilowatts through just the rear wheels in the wet, flat in third or something, the rear drive basic M3 manual of today is about 110 grand cheaper in real terms, and it makes roughly 100 kilowatts more. So even the BMW M3 Halo performance car has become more affordable and significantly faster this century. Aussie boomers and even Gen X are just such A-grade award-winning whingers, so please don't let the facts get in the way of such a salient feature of our culture. Certainly $140,000 for a LandCruiser today would buy a lot of time on a lot of balconies with a view of a lot of Tuscany with a lot of ex-wives. You can take $140,000, and I get that this is a big chunk of coin, and yeah, you can drop it on a LandCruiser. And if you do that, then you don't get to drop it over here on something else pleasurable, do you? So opportunity cost is absolutely a thing, and we are talking about substantial sums of money, and you'd want to get it right, blah, blah, blah. However, it is an egregious liberty with the truth to claim that new car prices are out of control. That's bullshit, dude. In fact, new cars are the cheapest, meaning most affordable, that they have been today than they have been at any other time this century.